First kiss hurts, the virgin giant bride whispered against his mouth, her voice breaking on words she'd never imagined speaking to any man. But Dalton Mercier, the lonely cowboy who'd buried his heart 6 years ago with his wife and unborn child, didn't flinch when she stepped off that train and met him eye to eye. He'd sent for a mail-order bride to fill his empty Wyoming ranch, expecting someone strong, but he hadn't expected the fierce ache in his chest when this virgin giant looked at him like she was bracing for rejection. Now, on their wedding night, as lamplight turned her trembling frame to gold and her first kiss sent shockwaves through her untouched body, one burning question remained. Could a lonely cowboy who'd forgotten how to feel teach a virgin giant that her first night didn't have to hurt, that it could be so achingly beautiful she'd weep tears of joy? Or would her fear of being too much destroy the one chance either of them had at love? But to understand how they reached this moment, you have to go back 6 hours earlier to the Bitter Creek train platform where everything began. The September sun beat down hot and merciless on the wooden planks as the Union Pacific screeched to a halt in a cloud of steam and coal smoke. Dalton stood there with his hat in his hands, throat tight, second-guessing everything. What kind of desperate fool sends for a woman he's never met? What kind of man tries to replace a wife he couldn't save? But loneliness has a way of making decisions for you, and 6 years of silence in that ranch house had nearly driven him mad. The advertisement said she was tall and strong, good with farm work, seeking a fresh start. He'd written back 3 times before she agreed. Now she was here, and his palms were sweating like a schoolboy's. The train car door opened, and Temperance Whitmore had to duck to get through it. Dalton's breath caught. The woman who stepped onto that platform wasn't just tall. She was magnificent in a way that made his chest hurt. She stood nearly as tall as him, maybe taller in boots, with shoulders that spoke of years hauling water and splitting wood. Her brown calico dress strained across those shoulders, the hem hitting mid-calf instead of proper ankle length like it had been made for someone else entirely. She carried a single carpet bag that looked child-sized in her work-roughened hands. When her eyes found his across the platform, he saw something that made his jaw clench. Fear. Raw, naked fear of rejection. She was already bracing for him to turn away, to hand her a return ticket, to confirm what the world had clearly told her 1,000 times before. Her shoulders hunched inward as she walked toward him, like she was trying to make herself smaller, trying to disappear into a body that refused to be ignored. She stopped 3 feet away, eyes on the ground. "Mr. Mercier," she said quietly, "I'm Temperance Whitmore. I understand if I'm not what you expected. I can work off the train fare and be gone by—" "You're exactly what I hoped for," Dalton interrupted, and watched her head snap up in shock. Those eyes, deep brown and disbelieving, searched his face for the lie. He stepped closer, close enough to see the freckles scattered across her nose, close enough to smell the train smoke in her hair. "Miss Whitmore, I asked for strong, and the good Lord sent me someone who looks like she could outwork any ranch hand in Wyoming. That's a blessing, not a disappointment." Her throat worked. I'm too tall. Men don't. My Lorelei was barely 5 feet, he said, and pain flickered across his face before he could stop it. Broke like porcelain when childbirth took her. Broke so easy I couldn't. He stopped, swallowed hard. "I don't want porcelain, Miss Whitmore. I want a partner who won't break, someone who can stand beside me, not behind me." Temperance's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. In 23 years, no one had ever said they wanted her because of her strength, because of her size. The words felt like a dream she'd wake up from any second. "I ain't much to look at," she whispered, testing him. Dalton's jaw tightened, and something fierce flashed in his blue eyes. "Then you ain't been looked at proper." He picked up her carpet bag like it weighed nothing, nodded toward the wagon. "Come on, let's get you home." Home. The word trembled through her like an earthquake. She followed him to the wagon on shaking legs, watching the way he moved, confident, solid, real. When he offered his hand to help her up, she hesitated. Her hand would swallow his. She'd felt men flinch before at the size of her grip, but Dalton just waited, patient, until she placed her palm in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and he didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just helped her up onto the wagon seat like she was any other bride. As they rolled out of town toward the mountains purple in the distance, Temperance sat stiff and silent, hands folded tight in her lap. She'd made herself small for so long she didn't know how to do anything else. The silence stretched between them until Dalton cleared his throat. "You got questions, I imagine." Why'd you really send for me? The words burst out before she could stop them. A man like you could court local, could find someone. Normal. Normal. Dalton tasted the word like it was sour. You mean small and pretty and delicate? He shook his head. I tried that once. Loved Lorelei with everything I had, but I was always afraid. Afraid she'd break, afraid I'd hurt her without meaning to, afraid she couldn't handle the hard parts of this life. His voice dropped. Turns out I was right to be afraid. When the baby came wrong, she wasn't strong enough to fight through it. I held her hand and watched her slip away, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do. Temperance's breath caught at the rawness in his voice. I'm sorry. 6 years I've been alone, he continued. 6 years of that empty house echoing. I didn't want to court again, didn't want to risk. He trailed off, then looked at her directly. Your letters were honest. You didn't try to be something you're not. You wrote about hard work and faith and wanting a place to belong. That's what I need. Someone real. Someone strong enough to build a life with. What if I disappoint you? The question came out small, vulnerable. What if you don't? He countered. His eyes held hers. What if this is exactly what we both need? Temperance didn't have an answer for that. She turned to watch the landscape roll by. Endless prairie grass, distant mountains, big sky that made her feel small despite her size. After a while, Dalton pointed out landmarks. His ranch bordered those mountains. Good water, decent grazing, house was small but solid. He'd built most of it himself after Lorelei passed, needing something to do with his hands while his heart learned to beat again. Will I have my own room? Temperance asked, then immediately regretted it when she saw his expression shift. We're getting married tonight, Dalton said carefully. Circuit preacher's waiting at the ranch, but if you need time before we're properly husband and wife, I can sleep in the barn, won't push you into anything you're not ready for. The kindness in those words made her throat ache. That's not how marriage works. Marriage works however two people decide it works. His voice was firm. You've traveled a long way on faith. I'm not about to repay that by taking what you're not ready to give. Temperance studied his profile, the strong jaw, the lines around his eyes that spoke of grief and hard living, the gentleness in his hands on the reins. Something fragile and terrifying bloomed in her chest. Hope. I'm scared, she admitted. Of me? Of disappointing you, of not knowing what to do, of being... She struggled for words. Wrong. Dalton pulled the wagon to a stop right there on the dirt road. He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her heart pound. Listen to me, Temperance. There's no wrong between a husband and wife, not when it's honest, not when it's kind. Whatever happens tonight or any night after, we figure it out together. That's what partners do. I've never even been kissed, she blurted out, face flaming. Never been touched by a man except for handshakes. I don't know anything about being a wife in that way. Then I'll teach you, Dalton said simply. Slow and patient for as long as it takes. And if you decide you can't bear it, can't bear me, then we'll figure that out too. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so tender it made her eyes sting. I'm scared too, he admitted. Scared of feeling again, scared of losing again. But I'm tired of being alone, Temperance. Tired of half living. So maybe we can be scared together. Her hand came up before she could think better of it, covering his where it lingered near her cheek. His hand was warm and calloused and real. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a giant. She just felt like a woman. Okay, she whispered. Together. When they reached the ranch 20 minutes later, Temperance's first thought was that it looked like a place that had forgotten how to be happy. The house was well built but lonely, sitting in a clearing with mountains rising behind it. A few chickens scratched in the yard. A gray barn stood off to the side. Everything was neat and functional and utterly without joy. Dalton helped her down from the wagon, and she noticed the way his hand lingered on her waist, steadying her, like he was already learning the feel of her. It's not much, he said, suddenly uncertain, but it's home. It's perfect, Temperance said, and meant it, because perfect wasn't about beauty. It was about possibility. A woman emerged from the house before Temperance could take another step, older, round-faced, with kind eyes and flour on her apron. There you are, she called out. I was starting to worry you'd miss the train. She hurried over and took Temperance's hands without hesitation, squeezing them warmly. I'm Adelaide Calhoun from the neighboring ranch. Dalton asked me to help you get ready for the ceremony. Her eyes sparkled. and to make sure he didn't forget to eat something before his own wedding. Temperance felt a rush of gratitude for this stranger's easy acceptance. Adelaide didn't stare at her height, didn't comment on her unfeminine build. She just smiled like Temperance was any other bride and pulled her toward the house. "Come on, dear, we've got about 2 hours before the preacher arrives, and I brought my good dress for you to borrow if yours needs freshening up." Inside, the house was exactly what Temperance expected, clean but sparse, functional but cold, a man's space untouched by softness for too long. The main room held a table, chairs, a stone fireplace. Doorways led to what she assumed were a bedroom and kitchen. Adelaide had set out a simple meal on the table: bread, cheese, dried apples. "Eat first," she instructed. "You look half-starved, and fainting during your vows won't make a good impression." Temperance sat and ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her mind was spinning too fast. In 2 hours she'd be married. Tonight she'd be expected to... Her hands trembled so badly she had to set down the bread. Adelaide noticed immediately. She pulled up a chair close, voice dropping to something private and maternal. "Sweetheart, you're white as a sheet. What's wrong?" "I don't know how to be a wife," Temperance whispered. The confession tumbled out before she could stop it. "I don't know how to be with a man. My mama died when I was 12, and there was no one to tell me about the wedding night. And I'm so big and awkward, and what if I do everything wrong? What if he's disappointed? What if I hurt him somehow, or—" "Stop." Adelaide's voice was gentle but firm. She took Temperance's shaking hands in hers. "First of all, you're not going to hurt Dalton Mercier. That man's been bronc riding since he could walk. Second, there's no secret knowledge you're missing. Marriage bed is about trust and patience, not performance." She squeezed Temperance's fingers. "And third, most important, Dalton's got the gentlest hands in Wyoming. I've seen him deliver breech calves and set broken bird wings. He'll treat you with nothing but kindness." But what if I'm too much? The fear that had lived in Temperance's heart for 23 years poured out. Too tall, too big, too strong. What if when he sees me, all of me, he realizes he made a mistake? Adelaide's eyes softened with understanding. "Oh, honey, you think you're the first woman to feel this way. Every bride worries she's not enough or too much or wrong somehow." She leaned closer. "But I watched that man's face when you stepped off that wagon. He looked at you like you hung the moon and stars, like he couldn't believe his luck." She smiled. "That's not a man who's going to be disappointed." Temperance wanted desperately to believe her. "He said his first wife was tiny, delicate." "Lorelei was a sweet girl, but she wasn't built for this life," Adelaide said carefully. "The ranch was too hard for her, the isolation too much. The pregnancy—" She paused. "Dalton blamed himself for years, thought he should have taken her to Denver, should have known something was wrong sooner. He's been half dead with guilt and loneliness ever since." Her grip tightened. "You're what he needs, Temperance. Someone who can stand with him, not someone he has to protect from everything, don't you see? Your strength is a gift to him." The words settled into Temperance's chest like warm stones. She'd spent her whole life apologizing for her strength, trying to minimize it, hide it. The possibility that someone might actually want it felt revolutionary. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "That's natural," Adelaide said. "But here's what I know about fear in marriage. You're going to be scared together tonight. He's just as nervous as you are, even if he's trying to hide it. 6 years is a long time to be alone and opening your heart again after it's been broken. That takes more courage than anything." She stood up, brushed flour off her apron. "Now, let's get you ready to marry that man. And Temperance, when you're in that bedroom tonight and the fear gets loud, remember this: he chose you. Out of every woman he could have sent for, he chose your letters, your honesty, you." An hour later, Temperance stood in Adelaide's borrowed dress, deep blue cotton that actually fit her shoulders, let out with careful stitching to accommodate her frame. Adelaide had brushed out her long brown hair and pinned it back with simple elegance. When Temperance caught her reflection in the small mirror, she barely recognized herself. She didn't look awkward. She looked almost pretty, almost bride-like. "You're beautiful," Adelaide said firmly, brooking no argument. "Now come on. The preacher's here, and your groom's been pacing a trench in the yard for the last 20 minutes. Temperance's heart hammered as she walked outside. The September sun was lowering toward the mountains, painting everything gold and amber. The circuit preacher stood by the porch, an elderly man with wire spectacles and a worn Bible. Adelaide's husband waited beside him, hat in hands, and there was Dalton, freshly shaved, wearing a clean shirt and vest, looking at her like she'd stolen all the air from his lungs. He crossed to her in 3 long strides, stopped just inches away. "You're beautiful," he said, voice rough with emotion, then quieter, just for her. "You ready for this?" Temperance's mouth was desert dry, but she nodded. "Are you?" Something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Ask me again in the morning." It was meant to be light, but she heard the truth underneath. He was just as terrified as she was. Somehow that made it easier to breathe. The ceremony was simple and quick. The preacher spoke about covenant and commitment, about choosing love every day, about 2 becoming one flesh. Temperance heard maybe half of it. She was too focused on Dalton's hand holding hers, warm and steady, too focused on the way he never looked away from her face, like she was the only person in the world. When it came time for vows, his voice didn't waver. "I, Dalton James Mercier, take you, Temperance Rose Whitmore, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Her turn. Her voice shook but held. "I, Temperance Rose Whitmore, take you, Dalton James Mercier, to be my wedded husband." The words felt sacred, binding, real. When she finished, the preacher smiled. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife." He looked at Dalton with twinkling eyes. "You may kiss your bride." This was it. Temperance's first kiss, in front of witnesses. Her heart tried to climb out of her throat. Dalton saw her panic and stepped closer, blocking the preacher and the Calhouns from view with his body. His hands came up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. "Just you and me," he murmured. "Nobody else exists." Then he leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. Soft, careful, over almost before it began. But in that brief contact, Temperance felt something crack open inside her chest, a hunger she'd never acknowledged, a longing she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. When he pulled back, her eyes were wide with shock. "That's just hello," Dalton whispered, so quietly only she could hear. "The real kiss comes later." Heat flooded her face, but before she could respond, Adelaide was hugging her and the preacher was shaking Dalton's hand, and suddenly she was Temperance Mercier, and the whole world had shifted on its axis. Adelaide had laid out a wedding supper, roasted chicken, potatoes, fresh bread, dried berry pie. Everyone ate at Dalton's table while the sunset turned the windows orange and gold. Temperance could barely swallow past the knot in her throat. Her new husband sat beside her, occasionally brushing her hand with his, and every casual touch sent electricity up her arm. The Calhouns told stories about the territory, about harsh winters and summer storms, about their own early days of marriage. Adelaide caught Temperance's eye more than once with encouraging smiles. But eventually, inevitably, the meal ended. The Calhouns made their goodbyes with knowing looks. Adelaide hugged Temperance one more time. "You'll be just fine," she whispered. "Trust him, trust yourself." Then they were gone, wagon rumbling, away into the dusk, and Temperance was alone with her husband in the suddenly too quiet house. Dalton cleared his throat. I'll clean up these dishes." "I'll help." Temperance's voice came out higher than normal. They worked in loaded silence, carrying plates to the kitchen, pumping water into the basin. Their hands brushed in the soapy water, and both of them froze. The air between them felt thick enough to choke on. "Temperance?" Dalton's voice was low. She looked up at him, heart pounding. His eyes were dark, intense. "You're scared." It wasn't a question. She nodded anyway, unable to speak. "Of me, or of what comes next?" "Both," she whispered. "Neither, I don't know." Her hands twisted in the dish towel. "I don't know how to be what you need. I don't know what to do, how to act, what you expect. And I'm afraid I'll do everything wrong and you'll regret." He kissed her. Not gentle this time. Desperate. Hungry. His hands framed her face, and his mouth moved against hers with an urgency that stole her breath. Temperance gasped in shock, and his tongue swept in, tasting her, claiming her. She made a sound she'd never made before, half whimper, half moan, and clutched his shirt to stay upright. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "First kiss hurts," Temperance breathed, shocked by her own words. Dalton went still. "Hurts? I didn't mean to—" "Not pain," she interrupted, trying to find words for sensations she'd never felt before. "It's like too much feeling. Like my chest might crack open, like I can't hold it all inside." Her eyes were wet. "Is that normal?" His expression gentled into something that made her knees weak. "That's what it's supposed to feel like when it's real, darling." His thumbs caught the tears beginning to slip down her cheeks. Like you can't hold it all inside. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, teaching her the rhythm, the give and take. When her tongue tentatively met his, he groaned against her mouth. They kissed until Temperance was dizzy, until her whole body felt like it was burning from the inside out, until she forgot to be afraid and just felt. When they finally broke apart, Dalton rested his forehead against hers. "Bedroom's through there," he said roughly, nodding toward the door off the main room. "I need you to understand something before we walk through that door." She waited, trembling. "We can wait," he said. "Long as you need. I didn't marry you for this. I married you because your letters showed me someone real, someone kind, someone who understood loss and wanted a new beginning much as I did." His voice dropped. "So if you need time, we take time. I can sleep in the barn, or—" "Do you want to wait?" Temperance interrupted. The question was bold, but she needed to know. Dalton's laugh was strained. "I want you so much I'm shaking, but only when you're ready." Temperance looked at this man, her husband, really looked at him, saw the iwi desire burning in his eyes, saw the restraint it cost him to offer her a choice, saw the gentleness that lived alongside the hunger. Something settled in her chest, a decision. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I'm ready. I don't want to wait." "You're sure?" She nodded. Then, voice barely audible, I don't know what to do. I don't want to disappoint you." Dalton's hand slid down to her waist, thumbs brushing the underside of her ribs. "Temperance, look at me." She did. His eyes were blazing. "There's no way you could disappoint me. We're going to learn each other, slow, together. And if something don't feel right, you tell me. Promise me you'll tell me." "I promise." He took her hand, that big, work-roughened hand that had always made her feel masculine and wrong, and brought it to his lips, kissed her knuckles one by one. "Then come to bed with me, wife. Let me show you what beautiful really means." Dalton led her through the doorway into his bedroom, their bedroom now, and Temperance's breath caught. A single lamp glowed golden on the bedside table, casting soft shadows across handmade furniture and a quilt that looked like it had seen better days. The bed dominated the small space, and just looking at it made her heart slam against her ribs. This was real. This was happening. In minutes, she'd know things she'd only wondered about in shameful, secret moments. "Breathe," Dalton murmured, closing the door behind them. The soft click of the latch sounded impossibly loud. He didn't approach her right away. Instead, he sat on the wooden trunk at the foot of the bed, giving her space. "Come here." Temperance's legs shook as she crossed to him. When she stood before him, he reached up and began unpinning her hair with careful fingers. Each pin clinked into the dish on the bedside table. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and Dalton's hands slid through it with something like reverence. "Beautiful," he whispered. "I've been wanting to see it down since the moment you stepped off that train." "It's just hair," she said nervously. "It's yours. That makes it beautiful." His hands moved to the buttons at the back of her dress. "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. His fingers worked each button slowly, deliberately, like he was unwrapping something precious. The dress loosened across her shoulders, and cool air kissed her skin. When it pooled at her feet, she stood in just her thin chemise and petticoat, feeling more exposed than she'd ever been in her life. Every instinct screamed at her to cover herself, to hide the broad shoulders and muscled arms that made her look so unfeminine. But Dalton's sharp inhale stopped her. "God Almighty," he breathed. His hands settled on her waist, slid up her ribcage, across her shoulders, not groping, exploring, learning. "You're magnificent, like a warrior woman from the old stories." "I'm too big," Temperance whispered. "Too strong, too—" He stood abruptly and kissed her protest away. "You're perfect-sized for me," he said against her mouth. "Don't you see? I don't have to bend to hold you. Don't have to worry I'll break you. You fit me, Temperance, like you were made for me." To prove it, he pulled her flush against him, and she felt the hard evidence of his desire pressing against her stomach. Heat flooded her face. "I felt that," she gasped. "Good." His voice was rough velvet. "That's what you do to me. That's how much I want you." His hands found the ties of her petticoat, loosened them. It fell away, leaving just the chemise. Through the thin fabric, he could see the outline of her body, the curves and planes she'd always tried to hide. His eyes darkened. "Let me see you. All of you." Temperance's hands trembled as she reached for the hem of her chemise. This was it, the moment he'd see everything and realize his mistake. But when she pulled the fabric over her head and stood naked before him, Dalton didn't recoil. He didn't look disappointed. His eyes traced every inch of her like he was memorizing scripture, and the expression on his face was pure hunger. Your turn, she whispered, surprising herself with the boldness. Dalton's hands went to his shirt buttons, but they were shaking so badly he fumbled. Temperance reached out and helped him, her big hands steadier than his in this moment. She pushed the shirt off his shoulders, revealing a chest carved with muscle and marked with scars, a life lived hard and physical. She touched a puckered scar below his ribs tentatively. What happened? Ornery bull, 5 years back. His voice was strained. Temperance, if you keep touching me like that, I'm going to lose what little control I got left. She pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. He caught her hand, pressed it back to his chest, over his hammering heart. I want your hands on me. Want it so much it's killing me. I'm just trying to go slow and you're making it damn hard. He kicked off his boots, stripped off his pants, and then they were both naked in the lamplight, and Temperance couldn't breathe. He was beautiful, powerfully built, scarred, undeniably male, and he wanted her. The proof of it stood between them, and she couldn't stop staring until embarrassment made her drop her gaze. Dalton cupped her chin, tilted her face back up. Don't hide from me. Not here. Not now. I don't know what to do next, she admitted. Lie down with me. He drew her to the bed, pulled back the quilt. The sheets were clean and cool against her fevered skin as she lay back. Dalton stretched out beside her, propped on one elbow, just looking. His free hand traced the line of her collarbone, down between her breasts, across her stomach. She shivered at every touch. You're shaking, he observed. So are you. He smiled, crooked, vulnerable. 6 years is a long time to be alone. And he paused, I've never wanted anyone the way I want you. It's terrifying. The honesty undid something in her chest. First kiss hurts, she whispered. Is this going to hurt too? Might, he said honestly. First time usually does for women, but I'll be as gentle as I know how. And every time after gets better, easier. We got the rest of our lives to learn each other, Temperance. Tonight's just the beginning. She reached up and touched his face, the rough stubble on his jaw, the lines around his eyes. I trust you. Something fierce and tender blazed in his expression. Then let me love you, wife. Let me show you what beautiful really means. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, until she was gasping and arching into him. His hands mapped her body with patient skill, finding places that made her gasp, places that made her moan, teaching her the language of desire she'd never known existed. When his hand slid between her thighs, she jerked in surprise. Easy, he murmured against her throat. Just feel, darling. Just let yourself feel. His fingers moved in slow circles, and sensation crashed through her like lightning. She'd touched herself before in shameful secret, but this was different. His hands, his knowledge, the way he watched her face to see what she liked. The pressure built and built until she thought she might shatter. Dalton, she gasped, I feel, let go, he commanded. I got you, let go. And she did, flew apart in his arms with a cry that would have embarrassed her if she'd had any room left for embarrassment. The pleasure was so intense, it brought tears to her eyes. When Temperance came back to herself, she was crying, not from pain, but from the overwhelming shock of pleasure she'd never imagined her body could feel. Dalton kissed her tears away, whispering praise against her skin. So beautiful. You're so beautiful when you let go. His voice was ragged with restraint. She could feel him hard against her thigh, could see the strain on his face as he held himself back. She didn't have words for what she wanted, but her body knew. She shifted beneath him, opening herself in instinctive invitation. Please, I want to feel all of you. Dalton's control cracked. He positioned himself between her thighs, the blunt pressure of him against her entrance making her breath hitch. Look at me, he commanded hoarsely. Stay with me. Their eyes locked as he pushed forward slowly, carefully, giving her body time to adjust. The stretch was intense, burning, and Temperance gasped at the unfamiliar fullness. Breathe, Dalton gritted out, holding completely still even though she could see it was costing him everything. Just breathe through it, darling. Tell me when. Don't stop, she interrupted. The burn was already shifting into something else, something that made her hips tilt upward, seeking more. Please don't stop. He sank deeper and deeper still until he was fully seated inside her, and they were joined as completely as two people could be. Temperance's eyes went wide with wonder. We're one person right now? Yeah, darling. His voice broke. We are. He started to move, slow, controlled strokes that lit up nerves she didn't know she had. The discomfort faded completely, replaced by a building pressure that felt different from before. deeper, more consuming. She wrapped her long legs around his waist instinctively, and the angle changed. Suddenly, every thrust hit something inside her that made stars explode behind her eyelids. "There!" she gasped. "Right there, please." She'd never been shameless in her life, but this man, her husband, made her forget every rule she'd ever learned about proper behavior. Dalton groaned and gave her what she needed, driving into her with increasing urgency. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together, pinned them to the pillow beside her head. "Temperance," he rasped. I'm not going to last." She felt him swelling inside her, felt his rhythm stuttering, and suddenly she was climbing that peak again, higher this time, sharper. When she shattered, she took him with her, both of them crying out as pleasure crashed through them in devastating waves. Dalton buried his face in her neck as he spilled inside her, and Temperance held him through the shudders racking his body. They lay tangled together afterward, hearts thundering, skins slick with sweat. Temperance was crying again, full sobs now that she couldn't control. Dalton lifted his head immediately, alarm flooding his face. "Did I hurt you? God, I'm sorry. I tried to be gentle, but—" "No," she choked out. "You didn't hurt me. You made me beautiful." Fresh tears streamed down her temples into her hair. "My whole life, people looked at me like I was wrong, too much, unnatural. I believed them. I thought something was broken inside me because I didn't fit what a woman was supposed to be." Her voice cracked. "But you looked at me like I was perfect. You touched me like I was precious. For the first time in my entire life, I feel beautiful." Dalton's own eyes burned as he kissed her tears, her cheeks, her trembling mouth. "You've always been beautiful," he said fiercely. "I'm just the lucky bastard who gets to show you." He rolled to his side, taking her with him, keeping them connected. His hand cupped her face with devastating tenderness. "You made me feel again, Temperance. 6 years I've been dead inside, and one day with you brought me back to life. You think you're the only one who got a gift tonight?" She touched his face, traced the moisture tracking from his eyes. "You're crying too." "Because I forgot what this felt like," he admitted. "Being close to someone, being inside someone, mattering to someone." His thumb brushed her swollen lips. "I was so lonely I wanted to die sometimes, and now I got you in my arms, and I can't believe you're real." Temperance kissed him, soft and sure, no longer tentative. "I'm real. We're real." A thought occurred to her, and shy heat crept up her neck. Is it always like that?" Dalton's laugh was pure masculine satisfaction. "No, that was—" He couldn't finish, just shook his head in wonder. "We're going to have a very happy marriage, Mrs. Mercier." "Again?" she whispered, shocking herself with the boldness. But her body was already responding to him still inside her, already wanting more. His eyes darkened with renewed hunger. "Yeah, darling, again." And he proceeded to show her that the second time was indeed easier, better, a slow exploration instead of desperate joining. He taught her she could move too, could take control, could chase her own pleasure. By the time dawn painted the windows gray, they'd loved each other 3 times, and Temperance had discovered muscles she didn't know existed. When golden morning light finally spilled across the bed, she woke wrapped in Dalton's arms, deliciously, sore, utterly transformed. She studied his sleeping face, the man who'd given her the world in a single night. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes opened. That slow smile that appeared made her heart flutter. "Morning, wife." "Morning, husband." The words still felt like magic on her tongue. He traced her jawline with one finger. "How do you feel?" "Like I finally came home," she said simply. "You did." He pulled her closer, kissed her with morning breath honesty. "And I ain't never letting you go." They lay there as the sun rose higher, talking quietly about the future, about the ranch they'd build together, about the children they might have someday, tall and strong like their mama, gentle like their papa, about growing old on this land with the mountains watching over them. Eventually they rose, dressed, made breakfast together with easy touches and stolen kisses. Temperance caught her reflection in the window as she poured coffee and didn't recognize herself. She stood tall, shoulders back, no hunching, no making herself smaller. Dalton noticed immediately. "What changed?" he asked. She turned to him, this man who'd transformed her in a single night. "Last night you showed me I don't have to make myself smaller to be loved. I can just be." Her voice strengthened. "I can be exactly who I am, big and strong and different, and that's enough. That's more than enough." Dalton crossed to her, pulled her into his arms right there in the kitchen. That's all I ever wanted. You, exactly as you are." He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, until her coffee grew cold. Later, standing on the porch with the September morning cool on their faces and the Wyoming mountains purple in the distance, Temperance leaned into her husband's side. "Do all first kisses hurt like that?" she asked softly. Dalton's arm tightened around her shoulders. "No, darling, only the ones that matter, only the ones that change everything." He turned her to face him, eyes serious. "I came back to life last night. You did that. Your strength, your courage, your beautiful heart. You gave me a reason to live again." "You gave me myself," she whispered, "the self I was always meant to be." As the sun climbed higher, painting the world in shades of gold and promise, Temperance Mercier stood tall in her husband's arms, no longer the rejected giant, no longer the woman too much for the world to accept. She was simply a woman loved completely, cherished fiercely, and finally beautifully whole. And in the years to come, whenever young brides came to her nervous about their wedding nights, she'd smile and tell them the truth. First kiss hurts, but only because love that real cracks you open and rebuilds you into something stronger. Something beautiful, something worth every moment of fear it took to get there. If this story of Temperance and Dalton touched your heart, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful love story. And tell us in the Oyor comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from our viewers across the globe. Your support means everything, and we've got more emotional, heartwarming Western romances coming your way. Until next time, remember, you don't have to make yourself smaller to be loved. The right person will cherish you exactly as you are.